Hello everyone, I'm Craig Schombacher, Interactive Director with Taylor. Welcome to Taylor Talks. Today's episode is going to be a little bit of a cultural discussion we have at Taylor on a regular basis. When do you take risks? When do you seek or ask for opportunity versus when is it given? Because there's a little bit of a difference. I'm hoping that other organizations will go, wow, that's different, unique, or maybe the same as theirs. When I say opportunity is taken, not given, not being mean, but I'm like, yes, grab it, reach for it, ask for it. Jenny, what do you say to that? Do you have an example of that, and do you think it's true?
Yeah, I do both. I have an example and I think it's true. I think it's true because I've experienced it in my own career, and it has built into me a person who walks around and says, oh, I love a person who raises their hand. And it's not like raise my hand, may I speak? It's raise my hand, let me try. Because the willingness to do something supersedes the skill set to do it if there's no willingness. And so I think that that's like a huge first indicator as to whether or not somebody can even be successful. The moment that I go back to that keeps resonating with me over and over again about that being true in our organization and that being like culturally embedded and not just something I think about or something I believe in is one time I was listening to Glenn give a speech to 600-ish women in the organization, and he was talking about his legacy of creating an environment where women can succeed in leadership. And all the multitude of things that he's done over the years. He wasn't like reading down a resume necessarily, but he was easily rattling off very specific things that he had done to make our culture one that supports thriving women. And so after feeling, proud about that, and there being kind of this sigh of relief in the room that, yeah, we really do have this super rad organization in that way, somebody raised their hand and said, well, then why don't we have more women in leadership roles? And he said, because y'all don't raise your hand. And I thought, wow, that's sort of telling about like what his perspective on why it is hard to advance women as opposed to the 600 women thinking about why is it hard for us to advance. And I looked back, I took it like a personal challenge, and I looked back and I thought, have I been raising my hand? Have I been speaking up? Have I been willing to take something instead of waiting to be recognized and given it? Not always. Certainly a lot, but not always. And then I recognized that, gosh, some of that feeling I've had maybe at times of being passed over or not being recognized or not being, showered with adoration was because I was sitting back and waiting and I wasn't raising my hand. So, yeah, I think it's real.
Been with lots of employees in your organization, hourly at all levels, right? You do a task, you're really good at it, and sometimes we really want you on that task because you're so good at it, but you might also be the next best supervisor or group lead or whatever. How do you manage that? And are you seeing people going, I want more, and how do you manage that?
Yeah, so that's a tough one. We're not seeing a lot of people right now that are raising their hands saying, hey, I want more, right? I don't know if they're not ready to take that jump or understand what that jump necessarily means. But I know I'm one that came through that, right? So I started on the front lines, and that was one of the things I kept raising my hand saying, hey, what do I need to do this? How do I keep going? And I was fortunate enough to have enough leaders above me that really helped fester that, right? And it helped me grow through that. And the way I look at it as, how do I take something off of somebody else's plate, right? And when I take that off their plate, now that positions me to be better to then take that responsibility on and have that next opportunity as well. But yes, I would love more people. And I love telling my story of how I started slitting business cards and look where I'm at today.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, Jamie, I know you love leadership. Yes. How do you get people to, how do you give them a little bit of goose and say, let's do this, ask for it? How do you encourage that within your team, the group you work with?
Leadership it's one of the most compelling conversations. I love talking about it. Again, nerd out about these things. And it's also really complicated, especially in an organization like Taylor, where we have a lot of people who are hands-on and doing, and then the actual role titles themselves start to get real limited. So a part of my approach to leadership is defining leadership outside of role and non-traditionally defining leadership, right? Is that, to Jenny's point, talking about raising your hand, for some people, probably the three of us, it's a lot easier to actually be like, hey, me, right? Yeah. Like we're vocal, we're opinionated, we have the gift of gab, as you put it, Craig. And for others, that isn't it. And they are leading. And so part of it is, one, I have to challenge myself to redefine what I see in a leader, because it's easy for me to pick people like me. Love it. Love people who think like me, act like me, believe what I believe in, want to talk the way I talk. But some of my strongest leaders are those who are very different from me. And I think it's harder for them to see themselves as leaders when the stereotype or definition of leader is often outspoken and asking for things and going after things. And to say, you can do that in a consistent, repeatable manner that isn't necessarily jumping or taking, but it is taking by just being the most consistent, predictable, and reliable person in the room, that I'm going to go to you without necessarily being like, oh, I know you're going to throw your hat in the ring. I'm actually going to turn to you because I know that you do the same thing every single time. I know you're going to follow through. So I think part of it is challenging individuals to think about leadership differently, as well as ourselves to think about what leadership can look like and create non-traditional pathways to that leadership by not saying, in some ways you are taking it, but you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room, the person standing on the stage, but be the most consistent, be the most clear, create goals that you're going after, right? It's that space of multiple definitions and multiple ways of looking at leadership that says, I may not be able to give you a role, but my goodness, I'm going to come to you with the most fun opportunities, or the things that bring you the most energy and joy, and the things that challenge you. Tell me what it is that what growth edges you're working on. And let's talk about that as leadership and not just about growth necessarily. So I think it's varied.
I feel like you're tapping into, defining or expanding the scope even of your question, Craig, around, are we talking about positional authority, or are we talking about influential authority and influential leadership, and even just effective self-leadership?
Yeah.
Like, how are you managing yourself and your day and your time and your duties? Everybody is capable of achieving leadership if you can define it as one of those three things, if not 4, 5, or 6, 7 others. And that comes from, rethinking the career ladder as this thing that kind of climbs upward from, I was an operator, then I was a team lead, then I was a supervisor, and then I was a manager, and that it has to be this linear thing that goes up and stays in that function. It's like, no, her name's escaping me, but she wrote Lean In. Sheryl Sandberg. The whole career is a jungle gym, not a ladder. And so I love exposing people to, we have 12 job families at Taylor. We literally have a role for a nutritionist, or a dietitian, serving food to the kids at Golden Heart. So it's like, you might not think as a printing company that you're just looking ahead, if you're looking at that advancement as a ladder, at what are the functions here, because I'm chasing positional leadership instead of all of the job families and all the ways you can hop over to a different piece of equipment, spin around on that, try the swing out, and then find your fit in that way.
So you actually said the word that I was trying to think of when Jamie was talking, which is how you influence in leadership, right? Yeah. So I remember years ago, somebody told me about, well, you don't necessarily need to be out front to lead either, right? You can lead from behind, and being able to master that. And it's that influence that you can put to say, hey, I think we should go this way because of that, right? And then that also, it doesn't need to be that you're the leader, but you're now part of the collaboration of doing what we're doing, right? Yeah. And that's where we want people to play, right? We want to be collaborative, and let's keep moving forward and improving the business that way. Yeah.
I think that collaboration or collaborative work is also something unique at Taylor as people are thinking about leadership, because it can be scary. It's scary for me still, right? I carry a lot of imposter syndrome here at Taylor because I don't know the language. I didn't come up in the system. But there is a culture, and if you trust it as you want to grow into leadership, to say, I don't know. And that can sometimes stand at odds or complete friction with, I'm a leader, right? I should know everything. To creating that environment and saying, in fact, not knowing might help you become a better leader by either creating a new approach or knowing I can go to Ben and say, Ben, I have no idea what we're talking about in Q4 or what your data reports are. Can you help me build my leadership? And so I think that's that other piece here of trusting the not knowing to help build a new wave. And I'm sure part of what we're worried about or thinking about is a new generation of leaders and a new wave of leaders that are going to be very different than leaders who maybe have come up through the organization right now. And one, are we opening that opportunity? and encouraging that you don't have to it doesn't have to look the same way, but
Right.
also saying part of leadership is saying, I don't know. And even for me, I've got a few people on my team right now where it's okay for me to tell them, we don't know, let's do this together. So I think there's an interesting wave of
I know.
how we're talking about growing
It's
leaders.
cooking a leader, not making a
Yeah,
leader.
right,
It's
right,
not,
or-
it's not science where you have to have the right
Exactly.
ingredients to
Yeah.
get something to happen in baking. It's more like cooking. It's like little garlic, little onion, however much
Yep.
you want, and it can turn out different all the time. There's flavors of it.
Yeah.
And I love the concept of I don't need to know everything, or I don't know everything, right? I am not the expert on all of it. I can't, exactly, right? And so I've used the example with my wife before, and it's the old school example of the telephone operator, right? Literally unplugging and plugging somebody in. I feel like I do that 20, 25 times a day of, I'm not the right person. You need to go talk to this person, right? Or whatever. Or I don't have that. Jamie, can you help me, right? We do that constantly.
Networking.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
My short story there is I went to Charlie when I wanted to do conversations with Glenn, had done hundreds of interviews with him, but nothing social, all business. I'm like, this is intriguing. I didn't get, my grandfather died. I don't have those memories except here. Can we try this? He's like, yeah, do it. And an interview with Larry and a couple funny stories. And Glenn's first interview scheduled for 30 minutes went like 2.5 hours. And he
I
looked
love
at,
those, by
and,
the way.
Yeah, and he looked at me and goes, I loved that. And it's like, but you don't know. But what I loved what Charlie says is do it because fail faster. That was basically the summary of that. Try it, see what happens. If it doesn't work, no big deal, and a different model. So how do we create the culture where, yes, because if you do it and it's wrong, we'll know, we'll learn from it. But if it works, oh my goodness, let's do it. How do we create that culture, Jenny? What do we do to, yes, it's okay, dive in, don't do the safe thing all the time, try it.
So I'm like, Jamie's eyes got really big because I know she knows, to use your word, the nerdy thing behind why this is true. But it goes back to what we were talking about when we were talking about people, and that is you have to create the psychological safety where they think that failing is a good thing. And that's all it comes down to, right? Like you can't fail faster if you are not going to fail in general. So you first have to be willing to fail before you can fail fast. And how do you get that willingness to fail? You have safety in your leader or in your team that's an acceptable and right thing to do. And I mean, what's the science behind that, Jimmy? It's there, right?
No, well, because what I tell my team, my favorite thing is for you to find the thing that doesn't work and make sure we never do it again.
Exactly.
Because I perfectly love it. Do that over and over because it creates a space for us to do the things that work and do them at scale and do them repeatedly. But if all we focus on is just doing the thing that we're comfortable with, it's neither failure or success. It's just getting by each day. And so I encourage my team. Yeah, failure is a tough thing for me. And that, like, my eyes are always like, because it is hard, even when I'm probably a little too intentional still in my role, where I'm like, I have to know that all of the decisions, that if it fails, I know what the breaking point was, right? But I love Taylor, and I have to continue to learn to trust it and encourage people to trust that if you're trying with intent and you're trying with a focus and an outcome, then all you've done is discover something we shouldn't be doing. That's a business value as well, and you bring learning that no one else can possibly have. And so I think it's in some way for me, and maybe it's just my epistemology, is if I call it failure, it makes me do a little bit of this like fail fast. But if it's like seek out the thing that doesn't work and do it like with intention and aggressiveness, and we'll make sure we never do it again.
you've
And you just helped us get better.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And you don't need to look at failure as it was a failure, right? You're learning. Everything you're doing, you're learning. And while fail fast is one that you definitely want to do, I think you're always failing forward, right? Because now let's not go backwards and do the same thing over again. There's also the trap of, well, we've already done that before. Let's not try to do that again. But when we try to do some of the same things again, they work, right? Because the situation's different, or you have a new set of eyes. Exactly. So even when we do a Kaizen event or whatever, and you hear employees that we've done this before, we've tried this before. Yeah, but we haven't tried it in this exact scenario, right? Let's try that and go out there and see what it does.
I love what Glenn has always, in numerous interviews, has said, I knew or thought we should stop this, right? So you take a risk, you start down that road, and you have to know when to say, yep, stop. Because you can keep, well, we've always done it this way, it kind of works, and there's always a better way to, right? How can you then get moving and get turned? So Ben, in operations, looking at you and to start us off, How do you then set up really good roadblocks to know we're trying it? Let's pause, let's stop, let's reevaluate. How do you do that?
Yeah, in my mind, it's, are you incrementally moving forward, right? As long as we're moving forward and not going backwards with something, let's keep trying it. Let's keep making changes on that, right? It's the iterative process to make sure that we're moving forward and not just staying still or going backwards with things. So it could be a new process that you're putting in. Sometimes you put new processes in and they fail hard right away. I mean, you probably see it over at LabelWorks, right? But you need to trust in, you have the right people that are on board. You guys are doing all the work to figure it out. Now let's figure out why it didn't work exactly and just pivot on it a little bit.
I think it's some stage gating, and you're gating for how am I going to know if it's not going well, but how am I going to know if it is going well? You need both of those things along the way. But if there's a feedback loop and you're getting the feedback so that you know it, I think if you're just blindly pursuing and you're thinking, well, I've got this far, I'm just going to go a little far. I've sunk this much money or this much time or this much effort. I can't quit now. If you go in thinking I can't fail, because I think that's garbage. I mean, I don't think failure is not an option. Just like I don't believe in work-life balance, I don't think failure is not an option is an actual thing either. I think, no, failure is absolutely an option. Failure and then not recognizing it and continuing to just obstinately push forward in the direction because of ego or spent, that's the problem, right? Not the failure.
Yeah.
So if you have the feedback loop and you kind of know how are you going to gauge this is working or this isn't working, if you can set that up ahead of time and you pay attention to the feedback, then the process or the system tells you when it's time.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think as we think about leadership development, though, too, or people taking leadership, it can be hard because sometimes you don't even get the opportunity to fail. And one thing is like hearing no or hearing nothing is an opportunity to bring the idea back. And that can be hard when you're thinking about taking leadership is sometimes you bring an idea to the table and someone's like, oh, no, that's not going to work. And then to your point, right, you abandon it instead of saying, I'm going to try this again. Or you bring something to the table and nobody acknowledges it and you're like, oh, well, that was, I guess, a worthless idea. But I think a big part about taking or creating leadership is about just believing enough in the idea that you have to say it, to hear no a couple of different times, to come back and say, no, but I really believe in this and I know you don't see it. How can I frame it differently? I mean, I think Nate Mulliken would tell Jamie Wolcott, you've got to learn how to frame it differently for me to understand how you believe it. And that's part of it too, is leadership is how to take it is to help other people see it for you and then not create the space, but step back and say, oh, yes, please try. But I think that sometimes too, leadership, we end up not taking leadership because we either don't believe that anybody believes in the ideas we have or we can't find a way to create that space. And so to hear no is okay. To hear nothing is okay. If you really believe in it, if you feel that
Test your own
passion.
belief in it.
Yeah, that's
Am I the one who doesn't believe enough?
exactly right.
I was just passively asking for that because it felt like a good idea in the moment.
That's really good.
I one time had a conversation with Glenn asking him for some money for some equipment. And I knew the background, so when he said it to me, it didn't trip me up. But it surprised me because his exact words to me were like, I really believe in this. Can you ask me a second time? Because I never say no the first, or I never say yes the first time. Can you just ask me a second time? Because I never say yes the first time. That's what it was. And I was like, oh, sure, yeah. I learned that. Somewhere along the way, somebody told me, he always says no first. Because he needs to see your belief in it.
Your passion.
And if you believe in it, you'll come back and ask a second time. So that's always am I willing to ask a second time if I get a no? That's a precursor.
Jamie, I loved you brought up Nate, several interviews with Nate that make me smile. It's like one thought, and I've heard him say this, when you succeed, it's also incredibly important to leadership. Why did you succeed, right? Because if you failed and you've stubbed your toe and you know why, great. But if you've succeeded and you're not quite sure because you don't understand your market well enough or you're not, oh, why did we do that? And you're running on autopilot, that's even more scary. So how do we adjust when we're succeeding to do more? What are your thoughts on that? So again, taking risks, but also we're doing well, but how do we then course correct as we need to do better?
I know I'm going to work my way through this. I think when I think about success, I always talk about it as how much, how well, and better off. And if I don't start with a better off measure, that by saying, what is it, when we do these things, what is it that's going to be measurably better? Because it's really easy to measure how much we do, right? I did 50,000 cards. fine. But if I sold them at a price that we're spending more, right, then nothing's better off. And so for me, I always start with a better off measure, make sure that it aligns with Corey or Ben, right? It's like, is there a space here that says the thing that I'm doing helped everything move forward? And then we can always go to how much, but I think the how well measure, the thing in there that says, well, I know that whether it be client confidence or employee engagement or something, like I'm finding a measure that says it wasn't that we did this over and over and over, and it was, because then it's also really easy to say, but look at all the revenue. Well, how'd you get there? Oh, right? Not repeatable. They really focused on that how well space, whether it be, and it could be things like work-life balance. It can be I hired someone into a role. It can be we automated these steps. That's something that makes it repeatable. How do we know? It's not because I said show up every day for 8 hours a day and do these things over and over, or everybody make $120 million this year. That's a goal for our team. It's what are the steps that we're putting in place and measuring that say, yeah, that's why we're being successful. And we can do that. We can share that with Ben. We can share that with Jen. We can share that across the organization or share that with colleagues. That's to me when you're really saying that's success, is that ability to articulate that space.
Ben, from an operations standpoint, any specific things to identify success, help people take risks? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as Jamie's talking, the one thing that sticks out in my mind is you need to know where you were to be able to measure where you are, right? So, you know, you look at if you're changing a process, what was our throughput before? What's our throughput now, right? That's like we were talking before, the stage gate. Are we improving or are we not improving? Same thing with a piece of equipment. We brought in a piece of equipment to do X. Is it doing X or not, right? That's, again, how we make that differentiation. Are we going down this path more, or are we pivoting and going somewhere else?
Jenny, any thoughts?
Are we having fun?
Now or in the,
I mean, like as part of the process.
And now I just want to go work for Jenny. I don't know. We're just measuring things over here. They're having fun.
I know. Okay, I'm going to pull that back. Yeah, are we having fun doing it, right? I mean, I think about how we measure success and what did we do there on, you know, is the goal enabled by what we did? And one of the goals is to have fun while we're doing it. Because we can go work lots of places and we can do lots of things. We happen to have ended up in printing. I don't think any of us are formally educated in printing. Okay, so here we are. Communication, though, I think we all got that down, right? So a communications company, that makes sense. But yeah, are we having fun doing it is an important way to measure it. And is it achieving the thing that we're going toward, which for us as an organization is opportunity and security. So that can only come with profitability. So profitability is a big measure.
I think the most important question is how do we create and improve the culture so people do take risks, right? We're all leaders to some extent. We do things. We're willing to jump out there and say, I'll try it for Joe, Jill, employee. How do we create that environment? What do we do specifically so more people say, oh, I'll take that risk? Because, you know, they don't want to fail and then, oh, shame on me, and now I have this mark against me. But we want to set people up so, no, try it because it could be the next great idea. So what practical advice, Ben, I'll start with you. What practical advice do we give, or what environment things do we do to create that? Yeah, I'm willing to do that. I will raise my hand more. I will take those risks.
Yeah, you actually said it in your question, Craig, with what I was thinking. You need to be open, right? You need to be open to trying something different, doing something different, and just, it's a risk, right? You're gonna have to take it. It might not be a big risk, but it's something that's outside of your comfort zone that's gonna push you to learn something different and to do something different.
Okay.
I think it's shining a spotlight on the risks that get taken in a positive light, because
Recognizing them.
yeah, right. If we're afraid of the failure, if we're afraid of the risk, if we're not taking a risk because of a presumed consequence, we have to remind everybody that a consequence is good or bad. It's you know, I didn't pass that class, or I got an increase in my allowance, or whatever it is. You know, there's a thing there. There's a consequence, the thing that comes after the action, right? That if we can put enough spotlight on the good things that happen, like, I'm really proud of you for failing today. Tell us how you learned. Also, I think as a leader modeling it, I made a mistake, and here's what happened because of that. And then look, I came back the next day and I'm still employed. Like just showing people that it can and it does happen and that we do it and take risks too and that it doesn't work out. And if we tell those stories with as much enthusiasm as we tell the successful stories, then it becomes a normal thing that's happening.
Yeah. Yeah. Jamie?
Yeah, just to jump off of what they said, there's a humility in leadership that creates a space for failure, right? In saying, wow, that meeting was horrible, or I did not prepare well for that, or God, I didn't think that one through. And sometimes modeling that and then creating the opportunity to say, what should I have done different, right? So I think there's some habits of leadership that we didn't come formally prepared to be, in print, and we probably weren't formally trained as leaders either. Each of us had somebody who saw something in us and created space to develop the habits of leadership. So I think it's part of that. And again, recognizing where leadership is not traditional and bringing that to that person, someone who may not see that what they're doing is leadership, that showing up every day, being the one who comes prepared, being the person who did go above and beyond and saying, hey, I see you doing that, right? And I can't give you a raise, I can't give you a promotion right now, but I see you doing that and here's the impact that it's having. And I think articulating leadership, articulating impact gets people wanting more of that, right? There's that feels, I didn't realize that doing that was leadership, and encouraging them to do that over and over until you can offer them an opportunity. And sometimes it's a horrible thing because you lose them on your team. It's not horrible, it's wonderful for them. But being that leader that says, my job, when I succeed, is when you have reached the next step based on both hopefully how you've articulated it, but hopefully how I can help you define that as well.
I don't expect you to know everything on day one. In fact, the day you know everything about your job should be your last day in it. It's time to keep moving. It's time to help somebody else get into this room so that you can exit and on to your, that's what, you don't have to know it all right away.
Yep. We hope this has been a good discussion. More importantly, take time with your teams to have those discussions. Encourage them to take risks, talk about it. We have those outside of Taylor are having those same discussions. Let us know, are we being the risk-taking organization you want us to be? It's a great discussion, and hopefully it leads to more. We'll see you next time on Taylor Talks.